Hey everybody, it's Jessica Dupuis. Hope you're having a good Thursday afternoon. I'm here to get started today with a little what I call Jessica and Friends IG Live, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some Texas wines based on a recent story that I've put out with Texas Monthly, and I'm going to be joined by my friend Shelly Wilfong of This is Texas Wine podcast. So one second while I let her in. Hey to everyone who has joined so far. Hey, January. How's it going, Michael? Hey, French Connection. I'm hoping that's Ben. I'm not sure who it is. Maybe it's Sherry. I'm not sure. Hey, Shelly, how are you?
Hi, Jessica. I'm doing well. How are you today?
I am great. How's things? You're based in Dallas, right? How are things up in Dallas?
Well, just fine. It's a lovely day. So I've just been down in your neck of the woods, but I'm back home today and glad this worked out.
Oh, that's good. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
We're like just kind of doing some research for wines or just other reasons?
Well, if you heard, or I know today was the first day of my podcast has been out, so I'm guessing you haven't listened to it yet, but I was talking to Julie and David at Pedernales about the possibility of doing some investing in a little B&B real estate situation down in Fredericksburg. So fingers crossed.
Oh, that's very exciting.
Yes.
Getting into the hospitality industry. I know we could definitely use more great places to stay down there. So that would be really awesome. That's so cool. Congrats.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I want to know, so I'm going to hold podcast, your latest episode for the last part here, because I think it is certainly timely. But I do want to talk about the podcast first off, because this is something that's fairly new. Today's episode is which episode number?
14. I'm doing 2 a month.
Two a month. Okay. Yeah. So why? What made you want to do this?
Well, I just thought it was something that's been missing in the Texas wine scene. And I'm an avid podcast listener personally. And so I'm always looking for what Texas news, Texas wine industry news out there could I find. And there's just hasn't been very much. There used to be one that the Texas Wine Lover did.
Yes.
The website put out a podcast there for a while, but it's not in operation anymore. So I just thought, during this whole quarantine period, time to learn something new and stretch myself. And so I figured out how to do it. And it's not that hard. It doesn't require that much equipment. But I learned how to edit and learned how to do all the sound stuff and thought I'd give it a try and see what kind of interest there was. And it seems to have been a hit. So
yeah, I think it's really great. I mean, so you've got it kind of formatted where you're doing some news, but then also it's an interview. Like, kind of what made you want to do the multiple phases of the cast, the structure of it?
Well, the first part of the podcast is always just general news about Texas wine that's been out there, because sometimes I think these important news stories kind of come and go and maybe they don't get the audience they should. And so I just like to bring them up and make sure everybody has seen this article or heard about whatever's happening. And then I go into kind of more whatever the major topic is. Generally, it's an interview, but I've also done some that are just like Texas wine in 10 minutes. So if people don't, have time to do intensive research on Texas wine, but just want kind of a quick blurb, they can just do a 10-minute episode.
Right.
So just a little something for everybody, some education, because, my love is to talk to people about wine and to educate about wine. So I include some of that most times. Talk about some of the more obscure grape varieties that people might not be familiar with in Texas.
Yeah.
And, there's no set format. I've changed it a little bit as I've been going, and who knows what's next.
Yeah. And then what's your background in wine? I mean, you started out as an enthusiast, or kind of what kind of got you to this point?
I did start as an enthusiast, and I started taking WSET classes.
Okay.
And, Texas wine came a little bit later. I started writing for Jeff Cope for Texas Wine Lover website.
Yeah.
And when he hired me, I honestly didn't know much at all about Texas wine, but I thought, well, how hard could it be? I mean, we had one page on Texas wine in my WSET classes, right? And I'd had some Texas wine because I've lived here an awfully long time, but I've learned a lot just through that process and have, I guess, specialized a little bit. And there really is an interest. People want to know more.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of requests from people that want to do Texas wine tastings and the whole Texas versus the world. I know you've also done some tastings that are laid out that way. So it's just fun and a lot to explore. And it's such a dynamic industry. So at first I thought I might not want to be pigeonholed as all Texas wine, but there's really, it's such a dynamic industry. I don't think I'll ever be bored.
Yeah, I can tell you. I mean, having covered it for 10 years now, I'm one, like there's no end in sight in terms of what content there is out there, but also it's great to have kind of other people that are focused on it because it's really hard to cover it all, you know?
Sure.
So today we're here to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving. And I just noticed yesterday you put something out with something that had to do with the State Fair of Texas, or tell me about that because it has some Thanksgiving wine suggestions.
Yes, I did an article for the State Fair that was about Texas wine selections for the holiday table. So it may be Thanksgiving and or Christmas, depending on what's on your menu.
Yeah.
And I selected 7 wines that I thought would complement. And that was my first article for the State Fair. They're really wanting to ramp up their Texas wine content. Okay. And so that's great. You know, this year, because the State Fair was canceled, we put together that case of 12 Texas wines that were blue ribbon selections.
Yes.
And we did a series of virtual tastings around those. So this is just kind of the next step to continue to give people Texas wine content.
Yeah, that's really great. So today we're going to talk about 2 wines for you and for me. Before we do that though, tell me where people can find that story.
Yes, if you go to bigtex.com.
Okay.
There's a community blog.
Okay.
And so it went out that way. And then if you don't want to miss any, go ahead and subscribe to their newsletter at bigtex.com and it'll come right to your inbox.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Okay. And then yesterday with Texas Monthly, I published a similar kind of article. We did holiday wines just because, you know, Thanksgiving's just around the corner, but then like we swooped straight into Christmas right after that. So, you know, I don't know about you, but this year is a little bit different with Thanksgiving. You know, it's great to be able to select a bunch of wines for people to try, but our feasts are probably going to be a lot smaller. I don't know about you, but it seems like this is the strangest year for the holidays.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one drinking at my family because my husband is on call. So
oh my goodness.
Usually I say, you know, open several wines and have a little, you know, one wine can't do it all, taste several different things. But if I do that, I might need to use the Coravin.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, so I have the Coravin right here. And
Good.
it is seriously what's going to do that for me because I love to taste, right? I mean, that's why you and I are into this. And I love tasting a lot of different things, but it doesn't mean I want to like drink all of the things. Definitely not all of the things. So I think the Coravin's like my new best friend. I mean, I've had it now for, I guess, a year, and it's just the best invention ever. Well, let's talk about a couple of wines. So why don't we start with we'll just do 1, 1, 1, 1. So what's one of the wines that you want to talk about?
Okay. Well, the first one I wanted to talk about is actually one that was in that article, and it's the CL Buteau Ramato.
Yes.
So it's an unusual winemaking style that I think is new to a lot of people, but it's actually an ancient technique from Italy, from the Friuli region of Italy, where they take white grapes and then leave the skins and the pulp and everything more like a red winemaking style so that the wine actually takes on some color. Mm-hmm. So it looks kind of pink and kind of orange. It's technically an orange wine, but it's the Pinot Gris grape. And that grape actually has a little bit of color to it. It's not just as white as a normal white wine grape would be. And so left on the skins, the wine just turns a lovely kind of orangish hue. And what's special about that wine is that it takes on a lot of texture that is a little unusual for a white wine. So what I like to talk about matching food and wine at the holidays is that you need a wine that has a little bit of heft. You don't want something that's like a super light white wine because it just doesn't have enough body. Mm-hmm. But this winemaking style, Ramato, definitely gives the wine some body, and it can stand up to those more complicated Thanksgiving dishes.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful color.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And I think that, you know, I actually included that one in my story too, because it's a great conversation wine, right? Like, as you mentioned, the Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio grape, which are the same. If you were to see them on the vine, you would notice that they do have this kind of like grayish pink coppery tone to them. That again, when you're making it as a white wine, you never even would know that. And sometimes you might see a Pinot Grigio that has a tiny bit of color, but in this case, you get to really see that shine through. And I remember when I tasted that wine, just finding this kind of remarkable savory character to it, you know? So it's got kind of like a rosé might have, you know, some berry flavors and some really nice tropical fruit notes. But then on the palate, like you talked about the texture of it, it's almost kind of savory. And to me, it's just like the quintessential food wine because of that. I like your comment about the heft too, because you want just a little, you know, a little more, because the Thanksgiving table, most of the holiday table, right? Like I mean, in normal years when we're gathering as a large family or friends, right? Most people are bringing something with them. So you don't know what's going to end up on your table necessarily all the time. It's more like potluck, and how are we going to make sure we've got a wine that suits all fancies, you know?
True.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great selection for that.
Well, I like that you included it in your article too. So
yes, I think we
a lot
might
of
have
fun.
similar tastes. I'm excited about that.
Good.
So since we're kind of on the whites, or that's kind of rosé-ish whites, whatever, as you said, maybe orange is probably the better way to characterize that one. So I brought with me this because I love the label and I love the name. It's so cute. And I'm normally not a sucker for labels. So I blame Hey Katie Jane at Hey Katie Jane, which is Katie Jane Seaton, for this one, because it's called Oh Hey Charolais, which is a play on what I think is the grape Chardonnay. This is not Chardonnay, but we'll talk about that in a second. Katie Jane Seaton is part of Farmhouse Vineyards, and they're based in the High Plains, and they have over 120 acres, I think, planted, where they grow for different wineries throughout the state. And one of the things they grow is Roussanne, which is a white grape from the Rhone Valley. So tell me about your experiences with Roussanne. You've seen it quite a bit, probably from different wineries in Texas.
You know, I enjoy a heftier white wine, and
Okay.
so I'm always a fan. I think Texas does it well. So
Yeah.
I have not actually had the wine that you have today, but I'm a fan in general of the grape.
I don't even think it's released. I had to ask them if they could send me a link so that we could, you know, include it on this Texas Monthly Wine Story. And they ended up saying, oh, well, we'll have to get right on that because it's not really out there. I'm like, oh, well, you better, because I'm going to write about it. So I hope you I hope you can
Right.
get it on the website. So let's talk about that. So as I mentioned, it's called Oh Hey Charolais. I may be showing it backwards on the screen. Sorry about that, but it's a cute little Charolais cow that is on the label. And the reason that it's called that is because, as I said, it's kind of mixed, or it kind of rhymes with the grape Chardonnay. We grow Chardonnay in Texas. I wouldn't say that it's like our star grape in terms of white wine grapes, but Roussanne is. And it is, to me, the grape that I love to share with people who do love Chardonnay, in particular Chardonnays that might have a little bit of oak treatment or lees treatment in the fermentation or aging process, because Roussanne can have that body. And if you look at what it does in the southern Rhone Valley, it takes on, you know, it can maintain a little bit of acidity in that warmer climate, but at the same time can be really nice and broad on the palate. And that's exactly what this wine does. When you taste it, there's nice lift on the palate. It's got really nice lemony characters and some like stone fruit tones. But at the same time, it's really nice and silky and kind of has this weight that rolls across your tongue. So the second I tasted it, I immediately thought, oh, this is a Thanksgiving wine. You know, this is for that person who just, you know, loves their Chardonnay, but might want something a little bit different. And this is where I think Texas can deliver without any trouble on a regular basis. So I hope you get a chance to try it. It should be available now. And I see I see Katie Jane Seaton has joined us. So I will hold her feet to the fire on whether or not we can get it starting today. But I hope you can give it a try. It's definitely at Farmhouse Vineyards in Johnson City. That's where I found it.
Okay.
And so potentially you can also get it through the White House Parker location in Brownfield as well.
Great. I can't wait to try it.
Yeah.
And I love the label. I like the little cute cow on the front.
Oh, I know. I totally fell for it. And I hate to be like a sucker for labels, but I think he's precious. So
yeah. I didn't show the bottle for the CL Buteau, but this is it.
Yes. the
So,
Romano.
yeah, and this is Randy Hester's project, of course. And another nice thing I didn't mention about this is that this is only 12% alcohol. So if you do plan to start drinking as you pull the turkey out to defrost, then this would be a good one
Yeah.
because it does have a bit of a lower alcohol.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I love that you actually did. Oh, look, Katie Jane has put up the link. So you can go get Hey Charlotte right now if you want to. I love it. She is always on it. So I think that, and I'm glad you showed that, the Romano, because you can see that color. I mean, how cool is that? That is just not what anyone, if you were to set that on the table and say, hey, we're going to taste Pinot Grigio, people would be like, what? What are you talking about? So again, great conversation starter. I think this Oh Hey Charlotte fits in that category as well. What's next for you? What else did you bring?
So my next wine, and I have a feeling that this may be a Katie Jane may have grown these grapes, but this is the French Connection wine.
Yes.
Counoise.
Yes.
So Counoise is one of those slightly obscure grape varieties for Texas, and often this is native to France, and it's often a blending grape. It's actually one of the approved grapes to go in Chateauneuf du Pape, but not often bottled as a single varietal wine, but this one is. And I have fallen in love with Counoise, and it's a little unusual, but this is the second one I've had from Texas, and they've both been lovely. I know Lost Straw makes one as well.
Yes.
But I had this wine at French Connection over the summer, and in the summertime when you're sitting outside, it was nice to have with a little bit of chill on it. So, of course, temperature can make such a difference when you're serving wine. I don't know that Thanksgiving will chill it to quite the same level, but it is a unique wine in that it's got just the right amount of fruitiness, spiciness, and also acidity. So it really refreshes the palate. And it's just a beautiful wine. I'm a huge fan of this. And I know I probably talked about it too much, but it's one of my real favorites of the whole year. So
yeah, I'm with you. This. It also, I brought it too.
Oh, nice.
It's one of my favorites that I tasted for this Texas Monthly story, and it was a surprise for me. I mean, here's the thing about Counoise. You're right. So it is a blending grape in France. Most people, if you throw that out there, they're like, I've never heard of that. I don't know what you're talking about. And that is a pretty normal response, considering that even southern France is growing less and less of it, right? And so yes, it's a blending grape, but I think, I don't know if this is true. I'm not calling him a liar. I believe things that he says, but I don't have any accurate information to back this up. So, and if there's a fact checker out there, watch out. But Ben Calais of French Connection Wines was telling me that it seems as though, or that he believes that Farmhouse Vineyards has the largest planting of Counoise, not only in Texas, not only in America, but in the world, based on the fact that the French in southern France are starting to plant less and less of it and replacing it with other grape varieties. So I would love to say that that's true because it sounds really cool. I'm hoping Ben is correct. I know we've got Sherry on here. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire on confirming it, but let's go with it for right now.
Sure.
I think it's pretty cool.
I know in California, Tablas Creek grows it, but they use it mainly as a blender and only occasionally do it as a single varietal.
Yeah.
So we'll have to find out about that. That's cool.
Well, and I'm with you on this, having just this particular nice balance of fruit. You know, we have tended in the past in Texas, and we still have a little bit of it, but we're balancing things out. But we've tended to go towards big, heavy, robust wines. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your preference. But particularly when it comes to pairing with food, and especially food like you might find around the Thanksgiving table, you need something that's got a little more versatility and isn't going to just knock your entire feast over the head with whatever's in the glass, right? So I really love what this wine has done. It's not in the carbonic style, so I don't want to even go down that road. But the taste of it reminds me a lot of what you might get out of Beaujolais. It's light, it's fresh, it's juicy. And I think juicy is the big descriptor here that really makes it an interesting wine. And again, conversation starter. Great to talk about a grape that no one's really heard of before, but also that Texas is making wines in this way as well, right? It's not just going to be your big, big, heavy wines, but it's also going to be your light in joyful and playful wines. And this one's 13.8% alcohol. So I'd say definitely on the lower alcohol level for red wines, which I think is also what makes it a really great kind of versatile wine for food pairing. I love
that you mentioned Beaujolais, because I was thinking the exact same thing. It does remind me of a Cru Beaujolais. And I know today is Beaujolais Nouveau Day, which is a totally different thing. It's a totally different style of wine, and not one that I particularly love as much as, you know, the Cru Beaujolais. But it does remind me a bit of a Cru Beaujolais.
Absolutely. I mean, you could even talk about like kind of like if we're talking of the Cru from Beaujolais, I think Morgon, right? Because that's where you get a little more strength. This wine is light and fresh and juicy, but it also still has some nice complexity to it that leaves you thinking. And so I think to me, this is a wine for everyone. This is going to make everyone happy, unless you're just a solely white wine drinker. But for the red wine drinkers out there that are looking for a little bit of change of pace, this is a really great one for that. So I'm glad you picked it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one, the last one, this is one I picked, and this literally just released, I think, this week. So it also made the list that I wrote about. I'm going to show you the front first because it's pretty, beautiful artwork. And this is from a producer that you've probably heard of if you've paid attention to Dandy Rosé in Texas. You've got Ray Wilson, who has been, who owns that and spearheading that label for a few years now with rosé and a sparkling wine that she does. She's also partnered with Andrew
Sides.
Sides. Sorry, I was about to say Timmons. I'm like, don't do that. Andrew Sides of Lost Straw Cellars to do the Grower Project. And so this is her third venture, and it's called, I'll show you the back, La Valentia. And this is her new release. This is what she's calling a Carignan blend, because it's 70% Carignan. And then it's equal parts Mourvedre, Grenache, and Cunoise. So here we are again. And so this is a 2019, so it's really young. This is similar. I wouldn't call it more along the same lines as like your Beaujolais, but it's got this really nice light character. So for the people that like Pinot Noir, that kind of like that, the lighter styles of Pinot Noir, so something you might find in Oregon, for instance, this is a really great alternative for you, because even though we might grow a little bit of Pinot Noir in Texas, it's not going to be our forever grape. That's not a grape we need to really be getting excited about on a regular basis. But we can get excited about grapes like this, especially when it's blended. And this wine is just really beautiful. I'm sorry that I'm not able to share it literally with you through the screen. But Ray has worked on this project for a while now, and they both CL Buteau and La Valentia are opening a co-tasting room just outside of Austin, between Dripping Springs and Austin. That should be open in December, so you can go and taste both of these wines, the Ramato and the La Valentia. And you should. This red wine is it's a gem. It's got really bright red fruits. It's got lovely spice to it. But to me, what's important is it's got this kind of slight tartness on the palate, but it's a pleasing tartness. It's that red, almost like Jolly Rancher kind of red fruit that you get. And then a nice little bit of earthiness on the finish. And it's just a really beautiful food-friendly wine. So
I had the opportunity to taste that recently.
You did?
I did. I did a tasting with the Women for Wine Sense of Dallas, and they arranged for some bottles to come to Dallas. And then we each got, we picked up off of someone's porch just several different 2-ounce samples so that we could all taste via Zoom with the winemakers.
Yeah.
And so I did get a measly 2 ounces of that wine. And let me just say that I wanted more.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really limited in production too. So it's one of those things that you may need to join the wine club like I did to get it, but it would be worth it because it's delicious.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So I was talking to Ray. So when you go on to, you can go to Wine for the People, which is her main site, and they do have it up there. But yeah, it looks like you have to kind of go through a couple of hoops and join the winery or join the wine club to be able to order it online. And and that's okay. I mean, it'll let you do like, I think 1, 3, 6 bottle options. It's up to you how long you want to remain a member. But if you want to get this wine online, that's the way you're going to have to do it. Or you can come to the tasting room. So Texas is really big. If you happen to be in Central Texas, then you're in luck because you can just hop over there. But it's because it's a limited release. This is small production. It doesn't say on the bottle how many, let's see. No, she doesn't put how many were released, but I think it's something like 85 cases. So not a lot there, but it's worth getting if you can find it. So before we have about 5 minutes left, and before we go, I wanted to talk a little bit about the podcast that you've just released today. It dropped today, right? I haven't had a chance to listen to it.
I understand.
Yes. So
it was kind of our Thanksgiving edition. And so
okay,
I interviewed, I've talked with Julie Culkin, and I've heard, of course, David Culkin, but I had never interviewed or interviewed the two of them together.
Oh, how was that?
We got together. It was great because I said, people are going to be interested in you two talking with each other because, they're brother and sister.
Yeah.
And of course they co-own and run Pedernales Cellars.
Yeah. And
so they just kind of talked back and forth, and it was fun. Visually I got to see them just and their interactions together, but it comes across on audio too.
Yeah.
Just how they divide labor, what has been their experience over the past year with COVID, but really more importantly, we talked a lot about the family. They just spent this year celebrating the 25th anniversary of the planting of the Culkin vineyards.
Yes. Yeah.
So that has been this year. And we talked about their Over the Moon Rosé, which is a tribute to their parents who met working at NASA during the Apollo missions. So
yes.
A lot of fun family stories, and their kids who are getting older. One of them is starting to work in a winery, and just a lot of fun stuff. It was great to be with them.
Yeah, that's really cool and really fun to see kind of like the wines that they've put out even more recently, especially, again, club wines, but that's kind of where you can get some of the really neat things and special projects that they've been working on. That's very cool. Do you also talk about some of your picks for the holidays, or?
I did. I mentioned them, on the end of the podcast. Okay. And my rules for the Thanksgiving table, which is generally one wine can't do it all, to pick heavier body whites and lighter body reds. And then finally, we have to mention dessert, that technically the wine is supposed to be sweeter than the food, which makes it quite challenging to pair something with your pecan pie or pumpkin pie. But Texas makes some great dessert wines too.
Absolutely. So. And sparkling can be a really great alternative for your desserts and stuff like that. When we were talking about that kind of sweeter or lighter fresh, I ran into Doug Lewis last weekend, or didn't run into him. I was literally at his winery. So I guess I wasn't just running into him, but he has a wine that's about to release. I think it'll be this week, hopefully. That is a Beaujolais kind of nouveau style. I mean, it's literally from the 2020 vintage, kind of semi-carbonic maceration, and he's released it, and it's this super lovely fruity style that you expect from Beaujolais Nouveau, and it hits like all those notes that you're talking about, right? Like, I wouldn't call it a sweet wine. It's definitely dry, but it allows for that fruitiness to really come out, and again, kind of show that versatility. It will be out, I think, in the next week or so. I think La Bergerie in Fredericksburg is hosting a big Beaujolais Nouveau day. And so he was hoping to have it ready for then.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, Shelly, I am so glad that you joined me. I feel like maybe we should do this on the regular.
Or in person. It sounds like we have similar tastes. We need to just have a tasting together one of these days.
I don't even know when I've seen you last. Let's just catch up on that really quick. I mean, I think maybe Texom, don't you volunteer? Do you volunteer at the wine awards too?
Yes.
Okay, so that's probably
I don't volunteer for the conference. I attend the conference and then volunteer for the wine awards.
So that's February. So it's almost a year. Yeah. Happy COVID.
I
know. Well, thank you for the picks. Thank you for, and you know what? I just noticed a Farmhouse Vineyard note. They're saying that, so they were able to obtain the Tablas Creek clone, and that's how they were able to get it planted. Well, they're super special. Get ready. Everybody's going to want it. So y'all need to get your contracts lined up.
Keep planting, Katie Jane.
Keep planting. Get some more.
Oh, Allie Smith's story is on too.
Yes. Hey. how's it going? Well, I hope you have, if I don't see you before then virtually, I hope you have a really great Thanksgiving and holiday season. And everyone who joined, I hope the same for you as well. Thanks so much for your time. And I will give the podcast a listen today while I'm driving to pick up my kids.
Great. Well, thanks, Jessica, and best to your family at Thanksgiving, and hug that sweet puppy that you have. It's so cute.
I will. Thank you so much. All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.